Report by the Kansas Judicial Court, death penalty cases in the state of Kansas cost an average of $300,000 more than cases in which the death penalty wasn't sought after. The death penalty for years has been a controversial figure within the United States judiciary system. As someone who's done a lot of research over the death penalty throughout my life, I'm here today to show you how the death penalty has had a negative impact on American society and the American legal system. To start off, the death penalty causes major problems within the American legal system. One of the causes of these problems is because the death penalty is so expensive. In Florida, death penalty trials cost around $51 million more compared to trials that only seek life imprisonment. This shows that an extra amount of legal costs go into the trials of people facing a possibility of death, and this extra amount could be considered a waste of taxpayers' money, and it could be considered an even bigger waste if this person is later found innocent or if they're not even given the death penalty at all. Because of this increasing cost of the death penalty trials, this really only provides a waste of money for the taxpayers' money. This money could be going to public works and projects that could benefit a community more than it would just be to put one person to death. Studies in Texas have shown that it costs 3 times more to sentence someone to death than it does to put them in a maximum security prison for 40 years. It is another example of a state spending what could be considered too much resources into one trial. And the sheer amount of money in these trials also begs the question whether it's just better to imprison someone for life than it is to put them to death. And with that also comes the question whether is it a better punishment to put someone in prison for life than it is to put them through death? The fact that the legal process is also slow and time consuming also adds on to the fact that it wastes so much money. There were 3 men in the state of Florida who, despite being put to death in 1975, still remain on death row over 40 years later. This shows that the death penalty itself doesn't give people a sense of justice right away. So it could be, you're not giving people satisfaction of justice when you're not even but executing these men. This also raises concerns whether it is morally right to do this, whether it is morally right to make someone wait so long just to die, and whether you're just keeping them alive to kill them pretty much. Also in 2015, 15 people were executed by the month of June. Of those 15 people, none of them spent less than a decade on death row. This also adds on to the moral questions of whether it is right to keep someone on death row for so long. It's like cultivating a pig for slaughter. You're gonna eventually kill them, and it doesn't seem right to keep them on for that long. And then one of the final things that adds on to the waste of taxpayers' money is the fact that sometimes innocents can even be put to death row and later exonerated. This would mean all the time, all the money, all the resources put into their trial, a waste of taxpayers' money. All of that just gone. And this also begs the question as to whether it is even right to waste all that money. And it also brings up the question that you could put someone to death that's innocent, that didn't deserve it. One such example is a man named Wiley Bridgman who was lucky enough not to die before his sentence, but he was exonerated after 39 years after being put to death. This is just an example of how the United States system wastes someone's life, and it also wasted the taxpayers' money. All in all, there are a lot of legal and economical problems that come with the death penalty. However, those aren't the only problems. The death penalty also causes complications within American society itself. These complications come in the form of socioeconomic and racial connections to the death penalty. Race has been studied and proven to be a problem with the death penalty in today's society. A recent study by Professor Kate Beckett from the University of Washington showed that in the state of Washington, a jury is most likely to recommend the death penalty to a black defendant than to a white defendant. This just shows that there's still, despite years of desegregation, there still is a racial bias against African Americans in today's society. And this bias in the court system isn't helped due to the fact that in recent months there's been increasing racial tension between law enforcement and the African American community. But because of this, there is now an increasing tension between the judiciary system and the African American community. The history of the death penalty also has shown that it has very racist origins that no longer needed in society. Before, the death penalty was mainly used as a form to punish the slaves and other African Americans after the Civil War ended. It was used pretty much as Jim Crow laws. It was discriminatory in a sense. And also, to add on to these racist origins of the death penalty, the public support for the death penalty has also been falling. And in 2010, 61% of voters that voted in a poll preferred another punishment besides the death penalty. And this shows that even the public is no longer supporting this execution method, because they can also see that it's just wasting resources that shouldn't be wasted. Even in the 2009 poll, it showed that police chiefs in America ranked the death penalty as one of the least likely ways to stop crime. It's not a deterrent. It's not going to stop someone from murdering someone else. So that's why we need better methods of doing things. All in all, the racial problems and waning public support shows that the death penalty is slowly becoming obsolete in today's society. In my final analysis, the death penalty causes many complications within American society, whether it be in the form of taxpayers or in the form of racial problems that escalate because of biased judgment of minorities. However, no matter what, it is slowly becoming apparent that the death penalty is no longer effective and never really was to begin with. We can only hope that the lawmakers of the United States will come to realize that the death penalty is obsolete and that change must come in order for the people of the United States to feel more united.